2,000-year-old mystery surrounding a legendary queen of Egypt named Cleopatra remains unsolved. A mummy said to carry a deadly curse terrified people throughout the last century. An ancient tomb hidden deep beneath the earth, containing secrets and immense treasures that have never been touched. And even ancient fossils with such strange shapes that, at first glance, many believe them to be extraterrestrial beings. What are all these things trying to tell us? Has the past ever truly rested? Or is every layer of earth and stone we dig up merely a small doorway leading into the vast labyrinth of history's mysteries? The more we explore, the more we realize that the ancient world is far more complex than what we once learned in textbooks. Behind the glory of kings, beyond the legends passed down through generations, there are always shadows that have never been brought into the light. Welcome to the Ancient History Channel. My friends, if you've ever thought history was dry or distant, today might make you think again. There are mysteries that have puzzled scientists for hundreds of years, discoveries that have overturned long-standing theories, and stories that grow more chilling the deeper you investigate them. So let's slow down for a moment, open our curiosity, and listen carefully to what the past is whispering through every ruin, every mummy, and every ancient fossil brought to light by archaeologists in today's video. And now, without keeping you waiting any longer, let's move on to our very first discovery. Cleopatra, the powerful queen and a 2,000-year-old mystery still unsolved. When speaking of the ancient world, there is one name that, even after more than 2,000 years, continues to spark discussion, debate, and curiosity: Cleopatra. She is remembered not only as a symbol of beauty, but also as the embodiment of intelligence, ambition, and rare political skill. Yet what keeps Cleopatra's story from ever fading may lie not only in her turbulent life, but also in a mystery that remains unsolved: the final resting place of the last queen of ancient Egypt. Cleopatra VII was a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Macedonian Greek lineage that ruled Egypt after the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC. Though of Greek blood, she regarded herself as the legitimate pharaoh of Egypt and was worshipped by her people as a living goddess. Ascending to the throne at age 17, she ruled from 51 to 30 BC. Cleopatra was not only the last female pharaoh, but also the ruler who witnessed the end of a dynasty that had lasted nearly 3 centuries. According to dynastic custom, she was required to marry her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, when he was just 12 years old. Though officially co-rulers, Cleopatra refused to share real power. She had her portrait and name minted on coins, removing her young husband's name from official documents, a bold act in a society that still favored male authority. This raises an important question: how was she able to do so? The answer lies within Egyptian culture itself, where women, though not entirely equal, still had certain opportunities to hold power, especially within the royal family. Yet power never came easily. Internal political conflict forced Cleopatra into exile. To reclaim her throne, she turned to a force even more powerful than Egypt: Rome. The man she chose was Julius Caesar. The meeting between Cleopatra and Caesar became one of history's most famous stories. Legend says she was secretly smuggled into Caesar's palace, wrapped inside a rolled carpet. But behind the romance was calculated political strategy. With Caesar's support, Ptolemy XIII was defeated and killed. Cleopatra regained her throne and married another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, to legitimize her authority. In 47 BC, she gave birth to a son with Caesar, naming him Caesarion. The child was not only the result of their relationship, but also a strategic piece in strengthening Egypt's political position. Cleopatra even followed Caesar to Rome, placing him in a delicate position between personal loyalty and political reality. But her ambitions were abruptly cut short when Caesar was assassinated at the Senate of Pompey by the Republican faction led by Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus. After this upheaval, Cleopatra returned to Egypt and declared Caesarion her co-ruler. Yet the political storm in Rome was far from over. The power vacuum led to the formation of the Second Triumvirate, which included Mark Antony. The meeting between Antony and Cleopatra opened a new chapter filled with passion and danger. Though Antony was married to Octavia Minor, the sister of Augustus, he became deeply devoted to the Egyptian queen. And as you might expect, like many powerful alliances throughout history, their union was not merely romantic, it was a direct challenge to Rome. Octavian, later known as Augustus, skillfully spread propaganda claiming that Antony was betraying Rome to grant power to Cleopatra. Tensions escalated, leading to inevitable confrontation. In 31 BC, at the Battle of Actium off the coast of Greece, the fleet of Antony and Cleopatra suffered a devastating defeat. 1 year later, as Octavian's forces advanced into Egypt, tragedy reached its conclusion. Antony took his own life. According to legend, Cleopatra allowed a venomous snake to bite her, though some theories suggest she was murdered. With her death in 30 BC, Egypt officially became a province of the Roman Empire. But the story does not end there. According to several ancient sources, Octavian permitted Antony and Cleopatra to be buried together. However, the location of their tomb has never been clearly identified. For over 2,000 years, generations of scholars and archaeologists have tirelessly searched for the final resting place of this powerful couple. One of the most notable theories centers on the Temple of Osiris at Taposiris Magna, near Alexandria. Under the leadership of archaeologist Zahi Hawass, 27 tombs were excavated behind the temple. 20 featured partially submerged domed structures, and 7 had staircases leading down into burial chambers. Remarkably, all the mummies were positioned facing the temple, a sign that the site may be connected to an important royal figure. Dominican archaeologist Kathleen Martinez believes this very temple may conceal one of history's greatest treasures, the tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Discoveries such as a bust of Cleopatra, 22 coins bearing her image, amulets, headless statues, and a mask of a man with a cleft chin believed to represent Antony have further strengthened this theory. In 2015, during a British documentary, Martinez announced that they were very close to a groundbreaking discovery at Taposiris Magna. So let me ask you, if one day the doors of that tomb are finally opened, what will be revealed? A legendary love story? Or evidence of ruthless political conspiracy? Cleopatra, the woman who once shook all of Rome, still seems to challenge history itself, compelling us to continue searching. Perhaps that is why Cleopatra is not merely a historical figure. She is a symbol of power, intelligence, ambition, and tragedy. And until the mystery of her final resting place is solved, her story will continue to be told, continue to be excavated, and continue to hold us captive. The mummy of a woman brutally murdered with an axe. In the quiet rooms of a museum in Northern Ireland, an ancient Egyptian woman lay for nearly 2 centuries, yet the true story of her death has only recently come to light. That woman is Takabuti, a famous Egyptian mummy who first arrived in Northern Ireland following the wave of antiquities trading after the Napoleonic Wars, and a silent witness to a dramatic murder that took place 2,600 years ago. Takabuti was brought to Ireland in 1834 and first unwrapped before the public in 1835. Beneath the flickering oil lamps of the 19th century, scholars and aristocrats gathered around an Egyptian coffin, intrigued by the hieroglyphs carved into its ancient wooden surface. Those inscriptions provided experts with the first clues about her identity. Her name was Takabuti. She lived in Thebes, the magnificent capital of ancient Egypt, now known as Luxor. She was the wife or possibly the companion of a powerful nobleman of her time. A woman of the upper class living in luxury, carefully buried, her hair neatly arranged. At first glance, anyone would assume she died of illness or old age, right? But no. The truth was entirely different. For decades, Takabuti's death remained a profound mystery. No one knew what had happened in her final days, until a team of British scientists, including Professor Rosalie David from the University of Manchester and Professor Eileen Murphy from Queen's University Belfast, decided to re-examine the mummy using modern technology. They did not rely on visual inspection alone. They conducted DNA analysis, X-rays, CT scans, hair sampling, and even chemical analysis of the embalming materials. Layer by layer, new secrets were gradually uncovered, much like unwrapping the linen bandages that once encased her ancient body. Then came a shocking discovery. Takabuti did not die of illness. She was murdered. CT imaging revealed a deep wound in her back, near her left shoulder blade. The injury had pierced through her rib with tremendous force. After careful analysis, researchers concluded that a sharp, crescent-shaped battle axe had struck her from behind. The blow drove violently into her body, causing catastrophic damage and leading to almost instantaneous death. Pause for a moment and imagine that scene. A young noblewoman, completely healthy, perhaps trying to flee, the killer standing behind her, arm drawn back to generate maximum force before swinging the axe down. It all happened in seconds. No chance to fight back, no time to cry out for help. Analysis suggests Takabuti may have been attempting to run away. The wound to her back indicates she was not facing her attacker. That raises a chilling question. Who struck the fatal blow? One theory suggests she may have fallen victim to Assyrian soldiers during a period of conflict. But an even more unsettling possibility remains. She may have been killed by someone close to her. Takabuti may have been the victim of someone she trusted, the research team concluded. Hearing that, it's hard not to feel a chill, isn't it? But there's more. CT results also indicate that Takabuti died at a very young age, likely in her 20s or early 30s. In that era, the average life expectancy in ancient Egypt roughly corresponded to what we might consider middle age today, making her death especially premature. Professor Rosalie David admitted she felt some relief knowing the death was nearly instantaneous. She did not suffer prolonged pain, she said. What makes the story even more moving is the way Takabuti was buried. Despite her sudden and violent death, she was carefully prepared by her family. Her hair was neatly arranged, and her body was embalmed according to formal ritual practices. This suggests that those close to her held deep affection for the unfortunate young woman. Once displayed as a curiosity in the 19th century, Takabuti has now become the center of a dramatic story involving conspiracy, betrayal, and modern science. Today's technology has allowed her to speak after 2,600 years of silence. And here's what's truly fascinating. History does not always rest quietly in books. Sometimes it lies within a small cut on a rib bone. Sometimes it hides in a single surviving strand of hair. Every mummy is not merely a preserved body, but an untold story waiting to be decoded. When we look at Takabuti, we do not see only an ancient Egyptian woman. We see a life abruptly ended by violence. We see the grief of her family, and we see the power of science to bring truth into the light. 2,600 years ago, she fell from an axe strike to her back. 2,600 years later, the world finally knows what happened. Do you think there are many others like Takabuti still waiting for their stories to be told? I believe there are. After all, this world is, in the end, still full of mysteries, isn't it? Full of mystery. 1,000-year-old skeleton at Prague Castle that left scientists struggling to determine its origins. In the heart of historic Europe, within the solemn grounds of Prague Castle, a 1,000-year-old skeleton once left scientists, and even political powers, scratching their heads for nearly a century. The story of the skeleton is believed to have begun on July 11, 1928, when researchers from the Czechoslovak National Museum conducted a historical survey within the castle grounds. No one suspected that beneath what seemed like peaceful soil lay a secret that would spark controversy across multiple regimes. That secret was the 1,000-year-old set of human remains we are discussing. The skeleton was discovered at the edge of a burial site dating from AD 800 to 1000. Inside the grave were not only bones, but also weapons: a sword, an axe, and flint. This immediately drew the attention of archaeologists, as this was not a typical medieval burial for an ordinary person. The man who uncovered the grave was Ivan Borkovsky, a Ukrainian archaeologist who had fought for both the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russia in the early 20th century. What followed was even more remarkable. In 1939, when Nazi Germany occupied Czechoslovakia, officials quickly declared that the skeleton was German, or at least a Viking warrior, but certainly not Slavic. Why? Because the sword and axe buried with the remains bore characteristics associated with Nordic culture. The Nazis did not stop at academic speculation. They used the discovery to support their broader theory of widespread Germanic origins across Europe. They even claimed that Prague Castle itself belonged to the Germans. Just like that, a 1,000-year-old skeleton became a tool of political propaganda. Then in 1945, when the Soviet Union liberated Czechoslovakia, the narrative shifted again. Soviet authorities insisted that the skeleton was of Slavic origin. Once more, the identity of the deceased was pulled into the vortex of power politics. You see, history is not always written solely through documents. Sometimes it is shaped by the will of those in power. Ironic, isn't it? For decades afterward, scientists continued to debate the issue. Some suggested the individual may have been a local Slav influenced by Viking culture. Others believed he was a true Norse warrior who had traveled into Central Europe. It was not until a more recent study published in the journal Antiquity that previous analyses and hypotheses were systematically re-examined. The report concluded that the grave goods represented a clear cultural mixture. The sword, axe, and flint were typical Viking equipment. Meanwhile, the bucket and knives reflected local Czech characteristics. The sword in particular was considered highly significant. Among approximately 1,500 medieval graves discovered at Prague Castle, this was the only one containing a sword. That strongly suggests the man buried there was no ordinary figure. Finally, through modern DNA analysis, the Slavic origin of the skeleton was confirmed. After nearly a century of debate, the biological identity of the man was clarified. Yet one question still lingers. Why was a Slav buried with a sword of foreign origin? Had he traded with Vikings? Was he a warrior who served in a multi-ethnic army? Or was he a symbol of a powerful era of cultural exchange between Northern and Central Europe? These questions remain unanswered. An unnamed skeleton, shaped by the tides of history, became the center of both scientific and political debate, proving that history can sometimes resemble an ancient grave. You may uncover the bones, but understanding the full story behind them requires time and patience. The massive treasure aboard the San Jose. Some undersea mysteries have captivated global attention for centuries. When a ship vanishes into cold waters, not only does it take lost sailors with it, but sometimes it carries a priceless hoard for humanity, both literally and metaphorically. Among them, no shipwreck is as coveted or as controversial in the archaeological field among governments or treasure hunters worldwide as the San Jose, the legendary galleon now lying silently beneath the Caribbean Sea off the coast of Colombia. San Jose, a name that might sound modest, but behind it lies a bloody, fierce, and bitterly disputed story. Its final voyage began like many others of its time, transporting a colossal treasure from the New World back to Europe to fund the costly succession wars embroiling the Spanish Empire. Yet San Jose never made it home. In June 1708, off the coast of Cartagena, one of Spain's strongest fortresses in the New World, the San Jose came under attack by British warships in a fierce naval battle. In the blink of an eye, the ship sank with an estimated 200 tons of gold, silver, and raw gemstones aboard, claiming nearly 600 crew members. Only a handful survived, and the treasure, valued at anywhere from a few billion to over 20 billion US dollars, disappeared into legend. Can you imagine what lies beneath the Caribbean seabed? Chests lined with royal crests of gold, pure silver from the famed mines of Bolivia and Peru, uncut emeralds yet to be polished, all destined to strengthen the economy of Europe's most powerful empire at that time. Instead of reaching Madrid, the treasure was swallowed by ocean waves, forever turning into the most sought-after legend in world maritime history. But here's what makes this story more compelling. The dispute over San Jose's treasure has never ended. In 1982, a U.S. salvage company claimed to have found the wreck of San Jose, but Colombia, the nation's sovereign over the waters where the ship sank, disputed that claim, stating that it was only in 2015 that they located the actual resting place of the wreck. Matters grew even more complex when Spain asserted ownership, arguing that the ship remained Spanish state property despite over 300 years having passed. And did you know this? An indigenous tribe in Bolivia also filed a claim for a share of the treasure, stating that their ancestors were forced to mine the silver aboard San Jose, and therefore they are entitled to justice for their forebears. A ship, a treasure, and a conflict spanning legal, political, historical, and ethical realms, all centered around the San Jose shipwreck. So the question arises, can modern individuals or institutions truly lay claim to a treasure from another era? Colombian law is unmistakably clear. All underwater archaeological objects within national waters belong to the state and cannot be sold or divided. No matter how high its worth, be it billions or tens of billions, the treasure remains non-commercial Colombian heritage. It's ironic, isn't it? A massive treasure resting untouched on the ocean floor, its value known in staggering figures, yet any attempt to handle it is bound by complex legal rules, deep-seated disputes, and unresolved history. Still, from an archaeological perspective, the San Jose is an unopened time capsule. It is not only a material treasure, but a living historical archive, potentially revealing sea routes, war tactics, shipbuilding technology, and the lives of 18th century societies. In that sense, its true value surpasses mere billions of dollars. It's a part of humanity's collective memory. Face down remains in an ancient grave and the shocking mystery of the undead curse. Did you know that the ancient world holds mysteries in its own unique way? Archaeology does not always uncover gold or treasure. Sometimes, what is brought to light is fear itself. 6 years ago, in Germany, archaeologists discovered an ancient grave with a burial position so unsettling it sent chills down anyone's spine. Skeletal remains lying face down in the earth, beside a knife and a pouch filled with coins. So why would someone be buried in such a strange way? Was it a form of punishment or part of some mysterious ritual? To answer that question, Professor Amelie Alteraga, an anthropologist at the Institute of Forensic Medicine at the University of Bern in Switzerland, began a detailed investigation. The findings determined that the remains belonged to a man who had died of the plague. The grave dates back to approximately 1630 to 1650, around the time plague outbreaks were devastating the region. But what captured scientists' attention was not only the cause of death, it was the burial position. In an article published in the scientific journal PLOS One, Professor Alteraga stated that the face-down posture was not accidental. It was intentionally done to prevent the dead from rising from the grave and returning as undead beings to harm the living. It may sound like something from a modern horror film, but for medieval Europeans, this fear was very real. To strengthen this conclusion, Dr. Alteraga and her colleague Sandra Losch, head of physical anthropology at the University of Bern, examined nearly 100 additional ancient graves excavated across Switzerland, Germany, and Austria over the past 900 years. A striking pattern emerged. Many of the remains had also been buried face down. Most of these graves dated to periods when plague outbreaks were particularly severe. Researchers also found references in historical documents to the term Nachzehrer, which can be translated as corpse eater. This was how people of the time described bodies believed to be gnawing on their burial shrouds and draining the life force of the living. In simpler terms, this was the medieval version of a zombie. This suggests that face-down burials were not random superstition, but rather a response rooted in collective fear during times of epidemic disease. Another study cited by National Geographic indicates that this unusual burial custom first appeared around 1347 when the plague swept across Europe, claiming millions of lives. When nearly half the continent's population perished, society descended into panic. People needed an explanation for the catastrophe. The idea that the dead were returning to curse the living may have seemed like the most understandable answer at the time. Yet the truth behind the rising from the grave legend is far more scientific. According to Professor Alteraga, the plague ravaged the body at a terrifying pace, causing rapid death. Victims often developed swollen lymph nodes and decomposed quickly if not buried promptly. After death, gases accumulated in the intestines, causing the body to bloat and sometimes produce strange sounds and a powerful stench. As the skin contracted during decomposition, hair and fingernails appeared to grow longer. Joints could make noises as the body shifted. Soft tissue shrinkage could even make it look as though the corpse were biting its burial shroud. With limited medical knowledge at the time, all of these natural processes created a horrifying image. A corpse that seemed to be moving. Imagine placing yourself in the 14th or 17th century. A loved one has just died from a mysterious illness. In the night, the body makes sounds. Would you assume it was simply biological chemistry at work? Or might you believe the dead were trying to return? Professor Alterage explains that before the plague spread widely, Europe had no clear concept of vampires or undead beings. But as the disease killed millions, Europeans gradually adopted Slavic legends about the dead rising from their graves. Those stories provided what seemed like a logical explanation for the strange occurrences around burial sites. Additionally, because people did not understand how disease spread, many believed that if someone attended a funeral and later fell ill and died, it was due to a curse from the deceased. That belief led them to take extreme measures to prevent the imagined threat. Burying a body face down became a kind of spiritual insurance policy. If the dead tried to claw their way out, they would only dig deeper into the earth. Looking back, we may smile at those ancient beliefs, But we must also recognize that in the darkness of epidemic disease and limited understanding, people did whatever they could to comfort themselves. That face-down grave is not merely an archaeological discovery. It is a mirror reflecting the deep fears of an entire era. If you had lived in those circumstances, what would you have done? Would you have taken the same steps to ensure the dead never returned? 280-million-year-old fossil creature in Western Australia that made the world mistake it for an alien. Have you ever been scrolling online and come across an image so strange you had to rub your eyes and look again? A creature lying motionless in stone, with a round body and 5 arms stretched outward as if reaching up from beneath the earth, looking like something straight out of another planet. Many people quickly declared with confidence, "This must be the fossil of an alien." But wait, if we take a closer look and follow the story behind it, the truth turns out to be even more fascinating than any UFO theory. The fossil causing such a stir is actually about 280 million years old, dating back to the Permian period, long before the age of dinosaurs. The creature is called Jimbocrinus, a species of crinoid, commonly known as a sea lily. The name sounds delicate, but the first time most people see its fossil, they're startled. These fossil specimens were discovered near Gascoyne Junction, a remote area of Western Australia known for its geological diversity. The viral images show multiple individuals preserved side by side in sedimentary rock, nearly intact. This suggests they were buried in their natural habitat, possibly by a massive flood or powerful storm hundreds of millions of years ago. In reality, Jimbocrinus was a shallow-sea, bottom-dwelling animal that thrived in the waters covering much of Western Australia during the Permian. It grew to about 9 inches long, with 5 arms radiating from its central body. Those arms weren't meant to frighten anything. They were used to capture food particles and tiny organisms drifting in the water. Like other crinoids, it belongs to the echinoderm group, distant relatives of modern-day starfish and sea urchins. Interestingly, crinoids were among the earliest echinoderms to appear in Earth's fossil record. Over hundreds of millions of years, their body structure changed very little. During the Paleozoic era, crinoids were so abundant that limestone in many regions is packed with fragments of them. In a sense, they were once among the most crowded residents of the ancient oceans. Jimbocrinus fossils were first discovered in 1949 by a cattle station manager nicknamed Jimba Jimba, which is how the genus name Jimbocrinus originated. Later, researcher J. Bostock formally described and named the species based on specimens found in the Kundlego Formation. The Kundlego Formation is a sandstone layer created by flood and storm deposits in the early Permian, about 275 million years ago. It runs along a dry creek bed and contains remains of many marine bottom-dwelling organisms from that time. What excites scientists is that fossils from this site are often exceptionally well preserved, among the finest examples in the world, and are rarely found elsewhere. Thanks to this remarkable preservation, researchers have been able to examine internal structures and even traces of soft tissue, which is extremely rare for fossils this ancient. However, when images of the fossils spread widely online, another issue emerged. Midwest Times traced the photo back to a US-based fossil dealer's website, where the specimen was claimed to have been legally excavated and offered for sale. This sparked debate about the legality of fossil collection and trade in Australia, as regulations vary by state. A representative of the Western Australian Museum, David Gear, clarified that in some cases, collecting and exporting fossils can be legal, but collectors must hold proper permits and follow strict guidelines. He also emphasized that, whenever possible, fossils are best left in their natural environment, as each specimen contains valuable scientific data about the history of life. And speaking of the history of life, we cannot overlook one dramatic event, the Great Dying at the end of the Permian period. This was the most severe mass extinction ever recorded, wiping out more than 90% of marine species. Global temperatures soared, oceans became warmer and more acidic, methane and metal concentrations spiked, and oxygen levels dropped dramatically, creating an environment nearly impossible to survive in. During that catastrophe, most crinoids were wiped out, yet a small number survived and continued to evolve. Today, more than 600 species of crinoids still exist on Earth. Think about that. From ancient oceans 280 million years ago to today's deep seas, that lineage has never been completely broken. Isn't that remarkable? There's another fascinating detail. The fossilized shape of crinoids inspired the design of the sentinels in the movie The Matrix. Those underground machines with long-reaching tentacles? Look closely, and don't they resemble sea lilies? So next time someone tells you they've seen a 280 million-year-old alien fossil, you can smile and tell them the story of Jimbacrinus. Because sometimes, what makes us think of distant galaxies is actually the very real imprint of an ancient ocean, right here on our own planet. 2,000-year-old fresco in Pompeii that appears to depict a modern pizza. When we think of pizza, most of us immediately picture a modern fast food widely popular in everyday life today. But have you ever considered that pizza might have existed more than 2,000 years ago? A recent discovery in Pompeii has astonished archaeologists and completely reshaped how we view the origins of this beloved dish. While excavating the Regio 9 district, one of the most luxurious areas of the ancient city, archaeologists uncovered an ancient wall painting depicting a distinctive dining scene. What surprised researchers most was that on the table, portrayed in vivid detail, appeared a dish that is difficult not to associate with pizza. But don't imagine a modern pizza topped with cheese and spices just yet. This dish looks quite different, more like a flatbread prepared with ingredients available at the time, crafted in the creative style of Pompeii's residents. This is truly a shocking discovery, because pizza has traditionally been understood as a dish that emerged in medieval Italy, originating from earlier forms of flatbread. Yet the presence of what could be considered the ancestor of pizza in this fresco suggests that the idea of a quick, convenient flatbread meal may have existed much earlier, possibly even in ancient Roman times. It raises an intriguing question. Could the pizza we know today have a far longer history than we ever imagined? According to Gabriel Zuchtriegel, director of the Archaeological Park of Pompeii, the fresco is not merely a depiction of a meal. It also reflects elements of Greek hospitality traditions, a theme commonly represented in Roman art. The bread shown in the painting may have been a type of oven-baked flatbread, not entirely unlike foods we still enjoy today, but adapted to the ingredients and culinary techniques of that era. The fresco was discovered in an area first excavated in the 19th century, inside a luxurious villa in central Pompeii. The house was buried under volcanic ash when Mount Vesuvius erupted in AD 79. Today, what remains allows us to glimpse the refined and affluent lifestyle of ancient Roman residents. Interestingly, near the fresco, archaeologists also uncovered a large oven, suggesting that preparing and enjoying flatbread-style dishes may have been part of everyday life in Pompeii. In addition, during the excavation, researchers found the remains of 3 unfortunate victims who perished in the volcanic disaster more than 2,000 years ago. But this discovery is not the only one that has amazed archaeologists. Previous studies in Pompeii have revealed many surprisingly modern features: streets repaired with techniques comparable to contemporary roadwork, sophisticated architectural designs with amenities approaching 21st century standards, and even a kind of ancient fast food counter, essentially a Roman takeaway shop in the city center. Pompeii remains an archaeological treasure not only because of what it reveals about Roman culture and daily life, but also because of how often it challenges our assumptions about the past. Now, with the possible presence of an ancient pizza, we are once again prompted to reconsider the history of food and culinary culture. Who would have thought that one of the world's favorite foods today might trace its origins back to a wall painting in a house in Pompeii, a city buried beneath volcanic ash more than 2,000 years ago? With every discovery at Pompeii, we open new chapters of history where ancient secrets and human creativity continue to rest beneath the soil. And with fascinating findings like this, Pompeii will undoubtedly remain a place that captures the attention of archaeologists and history enthusiasts alike, always holding new surprises waiting to be uncovered. The mystery inside the tomb of the Virgin Mary. Many of us have heard the belief that the Virgin Mary was taken up into heaven without undergoing death, a unique grace granted to her alone. But have you ever wondered whether this belief has sparked debate among different Christian communities? And could differing perspectives on this issue help us gain a deeper understanding of our own faith? Let us explore the story of the Virgin Mary and her sacred tomb, a site that draws not only Catholic believers but also scholars of religious history. One of the most notable aspects of this story is the tomb traditionally associated with the Virgin Mary, located at the foot of the Mount of Olives in the Kidron Valley in Jerusalem. This is believed to be the place where Mary rested after her death. However, this raises an important question. If Mary was assumed into heaven without dying, why does a tomb of Mary exist? This question has fueled theological discussion throughout Christian history. Possible answers can be found in ancient religious texts, including the Bible and other early writings such as Toledot Yeshu. According to long-standing tradition, the Virgin Mary died peacefully and naturally after falling asleep, a belief preserved in the Eastern Orthodox Church, which commemorates the dormition of the Theotokos, the falling asleep of the Mother of God. Although her exact age at the time of death is unclear, ancient accounts state that on the third day after her passing, Mary was taken up body and soul into heaven. Notably, after her funeral, her tomb at Gethsemane, near the foot of the Mount of Olives, was reportedly found empty, adding to the mystery and sacred significance of the site. The Catholic Encyclopedia records some of the earliest documents concerning the life of the Virgin Mary. One important source is a 2nd century text attributed to St. John and recorded by Lencius, describing how St. John and his disciple Prochorus traveled to Ephesus after Mary's death. Other 3rd and 4th century works, such as Joannes Liber de Dormitione Mariae and De Transitu Bm Virginis, also reference Mary's tomb in Gethsemane. A significant 5th century account comes from Cyril of Scythopolis, who wrote that the Eastern Roman Emperor Marcian and Empress Pulcheria requested relics of the Virgin Mary. They were told that no relics existed because she had been taken up into heaven. From the earliest centuries of Christianity, Mary's tomb has been regarded as one of the most sacred sites. In 1972, archaeologist and Franciscan priest Bellarmino Bagatti conducted research at the site. He concluded that the area may have been a 1st century cemetery and could very well have been the burial place of several notable biblical figures. During the investigation, researchers identified 3 burial chambers and confirmed that the tomb corresponded with descriptions found in ancient texts. In the 5th century, a small church was built near Mary's tomb. However, in 614, it was destroyed during the Persian invasion. Even so, the site continued to be regarded as sacred. During the period of Muslim rule in Jerusalem, it was also believed to be the burial place of the Virgin Mary. In 1130, after the Crusaders captured Jerusalem, they rebuilt a church on the site and entrusted it to the Benedictine monks. This Gothic-style church stood until it was destroyed by the Muslim ruler Saladin in 1187. However, the underground tomb remained intact. Another church was constructed in the second half of the 14th century and became a Franciscan monastery. Despite centuries of upheaval, the tomb of the Virgin Mary has retained its sacred character, attracting thousands of pilgrims and visitors. Today, the site is not only an important pilgrimage destination, but also an essential part of Christian history. In addition to the Virgin Mary's tomb, the site is traditionally associated with the burial places of her parents, Saint Joachim and Saint Anne, as well as the tomb of Melisende, who ruled Jerusalem in the 12th century. For these reasons, it is no surprise that the tomb of the Virgin Mary continues to draw great attention from believers and travelers visiting Jerusalem. It has become a powerful symbol of faith, sacred tradition, and religious history across the centuries. With all these stories and historical events, the tomb of the Virgin Mary is not merely a spiritual site, it is also a living symbol of the connection between past and present, between history and faith, between 70,000-year-old mammoth fossil on the shore of an ancient lake. During an unexpected survey at the American Falls Reservoir in Idaho, a volunteer with the Bureau of Reclamation discovered fragments of ancient mammoth bones exposed along the shoreline, launching a dramatic new chapter for archaeologists. The bone fragments were determined to be approximately 70,000 years old, leaving many in awe of the remarkable durability and preservation of these fossils after tens of thousands of years buried beneath the earth. Paleontologists and enthusiastic students immediately began the careful excavation of the mammoth's skull and tusk at the site. Over the course of 2.5 intense yet exciting days, they recovered several skull fragments along with a valuable tusk. However, the suspicion that more remains of the massive animal are still buried deep underground has only heightened the team's curiosity and determination. To retrieve the entire skeleton, experts brought in heavy excavation equipment and prepared to transport the precious bones to the Idaho Museum of Natural History in the city of Pocatello, where extensive and promising research is expected to take place. Notably, Mary Thompson, a veteran paleontologist who has worked with the museum for more than 3 decades, stated that she has never seen a complete mammoth skeleton in person throughout her entire career. This makes the new discovery especially invaluable and meaningful. She and her team are planning to return to the reservoir next season, when water levels drop, to continue searching for and excavating additional fossils. Their goal is to further complete the picture of this giant species that once roamed the Earth but has long since vanished. Doesn't it feel exciting to take part in a journey that uncovers ancient traces of life and helps us better understand the mysterious past of our planet? Imagine each bone fragment carefully pieced together, telling the story of nature and life as they unfolded over thousands of years. Every new discovery reveals previously unknown secrets about the Ice Age and prehistoric creatures. This is living proof that archaeology is not only the work of scientists, it is also an adventure for all humanity, where every excavation and every bone uncovered has the potential to reshape our understanding of Earth's history. What do you think about these surprising and promising discoveries? Could a complete mammoth skeleton soon be assembled and displayed, transporting us back to a lost world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. So we have just journeyed together through the deep layers of time, where every discovery is not merely an artifact, but an unfinished story of humanity. From traces of ancient civilizations to strange relics that leave scientists puzzled, all of it points to one truth. The past has never truly been silent. It is simply waiting to be heard. Every excavation is like opening a door that leads back hundreds or even thousands of years. And the more we learn, the more we realize that people in ancient times also loved, feared, created, and left their mark in their own unique ways. It is these fragments that help us better understand who we are within the long flow of history. The journey of discovery is far from over. Beneath the soil, countless mysteries are still waiting for the day they are revealed. If you're fascinated by the feeling of tracing the footsteps of time, then stay with us, because on future journeys, we may witness a discovery that changes how we see an entire era. Thank you for watching all the way to the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.